Hey guys, what's going on? It's 2 minutes to review. I'm Matt.
And I'm Zach.
If you haven't joined us for one of these, essentially this is our music review show. And we do new music reviews, we do classic album reviews. This time, we're throwing it back to a classic. Zach, what are we doing?
Well, here's my all-time favorite question to pose to you.
Are you ready to feel old?
Yes, but I do it like
the answer's the same.
But
the answer's the same.
But I do it in a much nicer voice. So let me just do it. Why do you have to be so mean, Matt?
Just toughen you up.
Oh, that's fair. So, are you ready to feel old? See, it sounds great.
Go on.
This year marks the 20th anniversary of Linkin Park's debut album, Hybrid Theory. It's an album that went on to have massive success. It literally projected Linkin Park into just huge mainstream popularity amongst not only metal and new metal fans, even just mainstream rock, which is especially astonishing considering that this is when new metal was almost at its peak of popularity, to the point that it was slowly becoming more cool to dislike new metal. And here came Linkin Park with an album that mixed hip-hop, metal, rap, techno, DJing, and just heavy guitar riffs. And it just became one of the biggest albums for Linkin Park, and just mind-blowing to think that it's 20 years old.
A little aside to this, I actually got to see them before the album came out.
I love this story. Yeah.
Oh my God. So I didn't know where or what bands were on this bill down at, it's called the Starland Ballroom by us, and one of the bands happened to have a larger following than what I expected. You know, there's a lot of people there for like opening bands. I forget who the headliner was. It doesn't even matter who the headliner was, but there was a massive gathering down there for this new and upcoming band. I was like, okay, this is interesting. And the band's name was called Linkin Park. And here in Jersey, there's actually a town called Lincoln Park. And I was like, oh, are they from Linkin Park, or, you know, what's the deal? And lo and behold, it was these guys, and I had a chance to see them before the album released and how big they were. And there's a video actually making its rounds on the internet now because Mike Shinoda and a couple of other guys from Linkin Park actually watched a video of themselves performing back in 2001 in small clubs, and they were doing a Zoom meeting, kind of talking about it and, you know, poking fun at each other about their hair and what they were wearing and whatnot. But it was very much a similar vibe, and watching that video brought me back some serious memories from that show. And I just remembered kind of being blown away, and it was one of the first times that I was ever blown away by an opening band. So yeah, I mean, just seeing them at that point in time, I mean, this might kind of lead into my review, but you know what? Let me just keep going. Zach, get the timer ready.
All right, let me get the official Epic Footnote timer ready. We have two now, so we both have one. Two. Well, yeah, we have to, but also it makes us both feel special. Matt, so I'm one step closer to clicking the start button. Let me know when you're ready.
It doesn't even matter.
Well, in the end, you're going to lose anyway. 3, 2, 1 step closer.
All right, so this album is an absolute classic from start to finish, and you hear that, and you hear the passion and the drive on the album. It's these kids coming out, and they do have something to say. It's not just being angry for angry's sake. There are very much so deeper messages on this album with songs like Crawling and Runaway and One Step Closer. There's just so much drive and such a focus from a young band on this one, and it almost feels like they were coached to the point of, okay, this is what a band should be. Here's your sound, you know your sound, go. And it shows now because this album is being played on classic rock stations all across the country, and they're playing not just, you know, rock songs, they're playing probably the biggest hit, if not one of their biggest hits of all time, and In the End. And it's more of a hip-hop driven song, but then Chester in the end, no pun intended, comes in with these super strong vocals, And it just shows that this album from start to finish was something that they put their heart and soul into. And this is what ended up becoming a voice of a generation. And you do see that in how everybody is responding to not only Chester in this world after Chester passed away, but the wake of the message that they, gave on this debut album.
You're done?
Yep.
So before I go in and give my perfect close to 2-minute review, I'm already predicting it. What's the star ranking you'd give this album?
It has to be a 5-star album.
Really? So you're going to go 5. Okay.
Yeah. And there's a lot of reasons. Like I said before, there's a lot of reasons for it. But one of the big things is, you don't really know how much people appreciate something until you don't have it anymore. It's that famous line, you don't know what you got till it's gone. Didn't want to go 80s hair metal, but I did. But you really don't know. And when Chester passed away, and the wake of people coming out of the woodwork saying, how much Chester meant to them, and that Chester was a voice of a generation, like you would almost think that he personally reached out and touched so many people. Like it's almost like he knew them on a personal level. Like, when and I hate to say it this way, but when you go to a funeral and you just see like an outpouring from like a community, like if it's a firefighter who passed away, you see an outpouring of the community of how much this one individual meant to everybody. But there's more than likely that chance that person knew 75 to 85% of the people in the room. It feels like Chester did that, but on a scale at least 100 times larger. It feels like Chester reached out and touched so many people with the lyrics and the messages, and knowing that, you're not in this alone. The feelings that you're feeling, I feel it too. I just had this outlet that I could create and put it out there, and because we're feeling it together, you're not alone. And this album feels like one of the many messages that he left. This was the main start of something more than just a really killer album. This was Chester's almost like his mission statement of who he was, bearing his soul about all the things that he went through, and just letting everybody know that, hey, you're not alone. We're in this together.
I don't want to cut you off, but I'm pretty sure you just gave another 2-minute review.
Yeah, probably. But
so
that's what
now
this
it's my
felt
turn.
Like.
It's my turn.
What more can you say?
I have so much to say. You don't even know. I'm crawling to say something over here.
You're crawling, huh? All right, sir. Whenever you are ready.
Count me in.
3, 2, 1, go.
This is not an insult. I swear it's going to sound like an insult, and I don't mean to as saying it's cheesy, but sonically and just musically, this album from start to finish really sounds like the perfect soundtrack to a dramatic action thriller that came out in the 2000s. Maybe not something like Fast and Furious hokey, but something a little bit more grittier, like a James Bond movie, or even like an Avengers or Marvel superhero film. And I say that because with every heavy distorted guitar riff, there's a really passionate vocal performance from Chester with his lyrics that really touch true to the heart, and then also a little bit of rapping from Mike. It's literally just the kind of film that makes you feel pumped up, but also emotional at the same time, which is why I say the soundtrack is a good action thriller should do that in a way. And it really is amazing how tight and confident they sound on this album, which is even more astonishing when you think that this is their first album ever, their debut album. And they really had no right to sound as incredible as they did on this. And it almost makes you think about how Guns N' Roses approached Appetite for Destruction, and that being an incredible debut. And I wouldn't but with all that said, I wouldn't call this album timeless sounding, but I also wouldn't call it outdated or stale sounding. When I say not timeless, I say that as a compliment because it sounds like something that was recorded in the 2000s, and almost in the same way as I mentioned of Appetite for Destruction being a great debut album, how that album makes you think back to the 80s in a fond way. Hybrid Theory almost makes you have fond nostalgia for the 2000s. So It really, like Appetite for Destruction, capturing the moment of the 80s in its height, Hybrid Theory really is the album that best captures the 2000 era of rock.
Okay.
And star ranking rise, I would give it a 4.5 star. Maybe I'm just being a jerk for not giving it 5 stars. It's funny, because as I mentioned before, nu metal was kind of at its peak in that you either still drinking the Kool-Aid and thought, yeah, Limp Bizkit is the best, or no, Limp Bizkit stinks. And I say that band because, you know, I would argue that they're kind of the reason why nu metal lost fanfare going into the 2000s. And here came a band that still gave it a second life. And at that time, I was kind of one of those who's like, I'm already starting to move over to like more aggressive sounding metal. And it wasn't until years later that I realized, no, they're not trying to be aggressive for the sake of aggressive. They're actually doing more, and it's really awesome. I remember the first time I saw them. So you saw them in a club, essentially, where they were a nobody. I saw them. They already had a huge amount of popularity, but still playing, you know, in the middle of a card. They were on the Summer Sanitarium tour with Metallica. And to give you an idea of, this was 2003, so they were still the third on the bill. Pretty much by the next year, they were co-headlining their own festival, let alone being on a like second fiddle. I think Limp Bizkit actually played after them, and fans were kind of booing them at that point. When seeing them live made me go, okay, this band, there's something really special here. Maybe they're not the most aggressive sounding band, but there's more to them. And I just been, you know, I still look back at them fondly. And it's an album that, all right, if it came out today, maybe I wouldn't be as psyched about it. But when you listen to it, you think back to the early 2000s when you were younger, and it just brings back good memories. There's some albums you're like, oh, this hasn't aged well. This album, it's aged just right in that it become, like you said, it almost become the new classic rock. So I would give it a 4.5 star rating.
You know, I did see them on Summer Sanitarium. They were great, and I do remember very, very vividly waiting for the Deftones to get off stage so I could see Linkin Park, and then it was Limp Bizkit, and then it was Metallica. See, I don't understand why people are on this whole hype train of, you know, beating down nu metal. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. If it's something hokey and stale, fine, move on. But, you know, just to criticize and say, oh, I hate this, because you know what? I bet a lot of people who used to love Limp Bizkit and a lot of people who used to love Linkin Park in the early days, if it comes on, you're going to listen to it. I guarantee it.
I don't deny that, but I get it to a certain degree why there's hate for it, because at the time, it just became too much. Literally, Fred Durst was trying to act like Puff Daddy, and his obnoxiousness was all over MTV. This wasn't a time when you can just like click on something else online. Like Limp Bizkit was everywhere, and then there was an onslaught of bands that just fit a mold that weren't very good. It was similar in the whole Nirvana opening up the floodgates for a crap ton of copycats who weren't very good, who just fit a mold. I get the hate, just because after a while of seeing Fred Durst, you'll be annoyed and not want to have anything to do with that either. He became a whole scene's own worst enemy.
And yet the pop genre still goes strong.
But you know what? This isn't let's look back on our nu metal days. This is 2 minutes to review, where we try to give a better review in under 2 minutes than the other person. So with that said, Matt.
Zach.
Would you like to know your time?
Yes.
Your time was 1 minute and 29 seconds.
Very respectable. A very respectable time. Zach, your time, 2 minutes and 11 seconds.
Just over.
Yeah, so that means you're not good at this game and I win.
Or I'm just very passionate. But yeah.
I'm going to go with the first one.
Well, screw you. But what do you think? That's our thoughts on this, what we consider to be a classic album. What do you think of Hybrid Theory 20 years after the fact? Do you share our same sentiments for the album? Are you still not a fan? Also, we want to hear your memories of first hearing the album and first discovering Linkin Park. Let us know on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Epic Footnote. Let us know what you think, and thank you all so much for listening.
See you later.